Hello viewers, welcome to the channel. My name is Ayantika and today I am going to discuss Vikram Seth's poem A Doctor's Journal Entry for August 6, 1945. From the book Treasure Chest for my ICSE students of class 9. Let's get started. Now, let's turn to chapter 4, page number 17. A Doctor's Journal Entry for August 6, 1945 by Vikram Seth. This poem by Vikram Seth was published in the year 1990 and it is an anti-war poem that consists of 30 rhyming couplets. We can say that this poem is a poignant exploration of the aftermath of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima during the Second World War on August 6, 1945. Okay, when we read the poem, we read it through the lens of a first-person narrative, likely that of a doctor witnessing the devastation. In the poem, Seth employs vivid imagery and symbolism to convey the profound impact of war. Another thing to note is that although this poem was published in the year 1990, it still remains relevant. Okay, because since it is an anti-war masterpiece, it prompts the readers to reflect on the human cost of conflict. Now, let us take a look at the title of the poem, A Doctor's Journal Entry for August 6, 1945. Now, as the title suggests, this poem is based on a Japanese doctor called Dr. Hachiya Michihiko, okay, director of Hiroshima Teizin Hospital, who was near the blast zone during the atomic bomb explosion on August 6, 1945. The reason I mentioned Dr. Hachiya Michihiko because his diary, named as Hiroshima Diary, provides details of 56 days following the events of August 6, 1945. Not only that, this diary provides records of the doctor's efforts to help the survivors. Interestingly, this journal caught the eyes of Dr. Warner Wells, an American physician working in Japan in 1950 as a surgical consultant for the American Bomb Casualty Commission. Dr. Warner Wells translated Dr. Hachiya Michihiko's diary with little assistance from Neil Sukifuji. Let's start reading A Doctor's Journal Entry for August 6, 1945 by Vikram Seth. The morning stretched calm, beautiful and warm. Sprawling half-clad, I gazed out at the form of shimmering leaves and shadows. Now, here we can see that the narrator observes the peaceful surroundings and seems to be in a relaxed mood. He is partially dressed and possibly looks through a window to observe the shimmering of leaves and shadows. Next line. Suddenly, a strong flash, then another, startled me. I saw the old stone lantern brightly lit. So far, we have seen the narrator to be in a relaxed mood as he observes the calm, beautiful and peaceful morning. Okay, but this sense of tranquility gets shattered by two bright flashes of light. And these two flashes of light illuminate an old stone lantern nearby. This confuses the narrator a little bit. Next line. Magnesium flares? While I debated it, the roof, the walls, and as it seemed, the world collapsed in timbers and debris. Dust swirled around me. Now, while the narrator debates within whether the bright flashes of light were caused by magnesium flares, he grapples with sudden brightness. Okay, amidst the roof, the walls, and the dust and the debris collapsing around him and thereby filling the air. Next line. In the garden now, and weird, my drawers and undershirt disappeared. Now, What do we see here? We can see that the narrator finds himself in the garden and he is stunned to know that his clothing got stripped away due to the blast's force. Next line. A splinter jutted from my mangled thigh. My right side bled, my cheek was torn, and I dislodged detachedly a piece of glass, all the time wondering what had come to pass. Now, here we can see that the narrator gets injured as a splinter gets embedded in his thigh. Okay, and here he also describes his right side bleeding and the torn cheek. In a shocked and detached manner, he removes a piece of glass while trying to understand the reason for this destruction and chaos. Next line. Where was my wife? Alarmed, I gave a shout. Where are you, Yoko-san? Now, here, obviously, at this time, the narrator gets concerned for his wife and he desperately calls out for her amidst all the chaos. Next line. My blood gushed out. The artery in my neck, scared for my life, I called out, panic-stricken, to my wife. Pale, blood-stained, frightened, Yoko-san emerged, holding her elbow. Now, so here we can see that while calling out her name, the narrator noticed more blood flowing out of his neck. Fearing a severed neck artery, he keeps calling Yoko-san's name in panic until she emerges pale, frightened and blood-stained, holding her injured elbow. Okay, next line. We'll be fine, I urged. Let's get out quickly. Here we can see that despite both their injuries, the narrator reassured his wife, Yoko-san, that everything will be fine. Not only that, he also urgently suggested to her that they need to leave the place. Next line. Stumbling to the street, we fell, tripped by something at our feet. I gasped out when I saw it was a head. Here, the narrator and his wife attempting to move, they fell. They tripped on something and they fell. The narrator gasped out loud in horror as he noticed that it was a head of a dead person. Next line. Excuse me, please excuse me. He was dead. A gate had crushed him. Here, the narrator reflexively apologizes to the deceased who was crushed by a fallen gate. Next line. There we stood, afraid. A house standing before us tilted, swayed, toppled and crashed. Fire sprang up in the dust, spread by the wind. Here, the narrator and his wife get paralyzed by fear as they witness a nearby house sway dangerously back and forth before collapsing and fire erupt amidst the debris. Now, since the fire swiftly expanded, this heightened their sense of urgency. Next line. It dawned on us we must get to the hospital. We needed aid, and I should help my staff too. Though this made sense to me then, I wonder how I could. Now, here, both of them realized that it was imperative for them to reach the hospital in order to get medical aid. Okay. And being a doctor, he also contemplated his duties to help his staff. But at the same time, he questions himself how he can do that since he himself is badly injured. Next line. My legs gave way. I sat down on the ground. Thirst seized me, but no water could be found. Now, here the narrator seems overwhelmed by all the destruction and chaos going on around him, and he succumbs to the exhaustion and sits down on the ground. Despite being immensely thirsty, no water could be found. Okay, next slide. Students, I'm not going to discuss the literary devices in this video to avoid making it too lengthy. Okay, in the next video, I'm going to explain the literary devices used in this poem. Next line. My breath was short, but bit by bit, my strength seemed to revive, and I got up at length. Now, here we can see that the narrator struggles to breathe, but gradually he begins to regain some strength and manages to stand up on his feet. Next line. I was still naked, but I felt no shame. This thought disturbed me somewhat, till I came upon a soldier standing silently who gave the towel round his neck to me. Now, here the narrator states that despite being without any kind of clothing, he did not feel any kind of embarrassment. Okay, now this lack of self-consciousness troubles him at first, but at that time he comes across a soldier who gives the towel wrapped around his neck to the narrator as a kind gesture. Next line. My legs, stiff with dried blood, rebelled. I said to Yoko-san, she must go on ahead. Now, we know that the narrator's legs were injured by some sort of splinter from the blast, right? That is why his legs that was covered in dried blood became difficult to move. And that is why the narrator instructs his wife Yeko-san to move ahead without him. Next line. She did not wish to, but in our distress, what choice had we? So here we can see that despite Yeko-san's reluctance, their dire situation left them with no other option but to move ahead, but to walk ahead and get some help from the nearby hospital. Okay. Next line. I saw the shadowy forms of people. Some were ghosts, some scarecrows. All were wordless dumb. Arms stretched straight out, shoulder to dangling hand. Here, the narrator observes the silhouettes of the survivors, some of them resembling ghosts or scarecrows, while all of them appeared to be silent and in shock. Okay. Their outstretched arms suggest possibly of burn injury. Next line. It took some time for me to understand the friction on their burns caused so much pain that they feared to shave flesh against flesh again. Here, it takes a little while for the narrator to understand that their posture aims to avoid pain of burns by rubbing flesh against flesh. Their arms are outstretched, therefore revealing a collective effort to lessen their suffering. Next line. Those who could shuffled in a blank parade towards the hospital. Here, the narrator notices that the survivors of the bomb blast who could walk, they have started to move slowly and they are walking in a blank parade in a somber procession heading to the hospital. Next line. I saw, dismayed, a woman with a child stand in my path, both naked. Now, the poet observes with great sadness as this somber procession of injured people walk towards the hospital. And he reflects upon the gravity of the violence caused by the atomic bombing on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. Next line. Had they come back from the bath, I turned my gaze but was at a loss that she should stand thus, till I came across a naked man. And now the thought arose that some strange thing had stripped us of our clothes. At this time, the narrator wonders if the woman and the child were bathing when the explosion occurred, prompting him to look away from the woman. But his confusion persists as he comes across another naked man, leading him to realization that the explosion has somehow stripped all of them of their clothes. Next, the face of an old woman on the ground was marred with suffering, but she made no sound. Silence was common to us all. I heard no cries of anguish or a single word. So we have already come to the end of the poem, and now we can see that an old woman lying on the ground. Her face contorted in immense pain, but she remained silent. Here, one theme is very much prevalent, that is of silence. Okay, this pervasive silence is very much common all over the poem. We can see this pervasive silence in almost all the characters mentioned here in the poem. They are all quiet, they are all stunned and very much shocked because of all the destruction and chaos around him. At the very end of the poem, here we can see that despite the devastating scene, there are no screams or words, only a haunting and profound silence that envelops the chaos. The poem skillfully explores several important themes. Firstly, it vividly portrays the destruction and chaos that follows the bomb explosion. For example, the collapsing buildings, the spreading fires, and the overwhelming chaos that ensues. This imagery captures the abrupt and catastrophic nature of the event. Secondly, the poem highlights human resilience amidst the devastation. Despite the horrors, the survivors are depicted as driven by an instinct to endure and strive for survival, therefore showcasing the remarkable strength of the human spirit in the face of adversity. Another prominent theme is of vulnerability and loss, symbolized by the motif of nakedness. That means this goes beyond the physical stripping away of clothing. It signifies the loss of societal norms, identity, and dignity experienced by the survivors. Next, the theme of pervasive silence in the poem becomes a powerful representation of the shock and trauma endured by those who witnessed the bombing. This silence creates an atmosphere of isolation and desolation, therefore emphasizing the profound emotional impact of the event. Lastly, the poem also highlights the theme of collective trauma endured by the victims of Hiroshima, therefore weaving a narrative around the personal experiences of a doctor while also capturing the broader anguish of the community. The theme of collective trauma also highlight the shared human experience during times of disaster. Now students, based on the discussion above, we can say that Vikram Seth here encourages his readers to contemplate the ethics and repercussions of deploying devastating weapons. We get to know about it through vivid depictions of suffering and loss. It serves as a stark reminder of the human toll of war. That is all for now, everyone. I hope this video has helped you to understand the poem a little bit better. That's all for now. Thank you. Bye.